Uh, Let me just introduce what we do. So Mercado Technology is a new age company. It's an emerging company. You can call us a startup also. We are a tech startup. And we work in four major domain areas, which we call 4As: automation, augmentative, artificial intelligence, and analytics. And if you take any emerging technology, everything boils down to these four areas, whether you talk of drones, robotics, IoT, cloud, AR, VR, intelligent kiosk, video analytics, blockchain, uh, anything. Now, one thing which binds all these things together, or which is a common layer for all these technologies, is a cyber layer. Because whatever we do and whatever we want to do, cybersecurity and securing of both data, information, and assets becomes very, very critical. And that's what we're going to learn today or discuss today. So Mercado basically comes with the vision that technology is a great enabler for our problems. Whether you take a simple problem like a school able to still impart education to their students online using edutech tools, which is happening for the last 3 months. Or you take a little complex problem of managing the entire COVID issues, right from patient screening to hospitalization to location of the right hospital with the right bed and a lot of things. So everything is being enabled by technology, and it's been there. So Mercado was formed with a vision to help customers with these technological areas and solutions, and we only work in these emerging technologies, right? And we are located in Bangalore in India, as well as Dubai, which takes care of our global focus. Now, how we define this whole technology disruption which is happening globally, and that will lead us to what challenges we are facing when it comes to security. So today, when we look at digital disruption, which is in its third phase, digital disruption one happened when computerization happened, when the whole computers and related things, or what we call in simple terms, computerization happened. Everything became computerized, right from your billing to your payments to your workloads, everything became computerized. So that was the first wave of disruption, which disrupted a lot of industries, which disrupted everything around, especially those industries which got totally perished. For example, the typewriter industry. We all know it used to be a huge industry in last 100 years, maybe more than 100 years before computers came. And that got disrupted, that got killed actually. It got rebranded to a new avatar. Then we were hit with digital disruption too, where we had technologies like we got internet. And this internet brought also had more impact when we had smartphones, in the late 90s, early 2000. That is when digital disruption too happened, and it again disrupted the entire industry. Every vertical it disrupted. Then we got into fast track and scale up. And when I talk of fast track scale up, more than computers, we were looking at cloud computing. We're looking at quantum computing now. We're looking at digital twins. We're looking at voice enabled auto, which is happening right now amongst us. You call up any call center, you are hit by a voice IVRS, or even this Corona IVRS, which is on the phone right now. Mixed reality, Web 3.0, which is totally enabled by artificial intelligence today. So all these are part of digital disruption, and that is what hit us around 10, 14 years back, and we have been trying to cope up, but some new challenges started coming up. In last 3 decades, if I look at one thing which has actually given us some learning as well as idea about how to manage all these things is the space by which these were adopted. The first wave of digital disruption, which was when computerization came up, it took many years. In fact, in India, if I take an example, computers entered mid 80s. It was only till the end of 90s that we had computerization everywhere around. Most of the factories, the businesses, hotels, or any industry take, they started adopting computers. But it took around 15, 16 years to become a mass technology, right? Then came digital disruption too, which was internet, and it took hardly around 4 years, if I remember right, because I joined the industry in the same time, 96, and that's when the internet started coming, and we had our first dial-up internet somewhere around 2000, in my company. And it took around 5-6 years for companies to adopt internet and make and believe that this is going to help us. And now when we are hit with digital disruption 3, where data is all encompassive, we feel that the cycle of adoption has gone down. The cycle of adoption means the time taken to adopt. It's now a matter of days. When this whole lockdown started, I had one of my customers, a education company, calling me and saying, can I get some platform so that I can conduct classes online within 2-3 days? And we had a partner who said, well, I can give it to you within few hours because everything is online. You just need to upload the content. Oh, now, if you don't have the content, that's a different scenario. Then you have to create a content. But if you have your content in PDF format or Word format, then the platform is helping you to actually upload the content and start delivering your lectures at least. So the matter which took 15 years to become a mass technology has now come down, where people expect to adopt a technology within few days. That is creating a problem because we are getting too much of data, too many applications. Look at apps. The moment government of India announced that they are banning Chinese apps, you know how many app announcements have been made in India? The moment we felt that collaboration is having a problem with Zoom, and right now we are on Zoom, by the way, we use WebEx also. Then Geo came and said, I'm giving you Geo Meet, which is okay. We have not tested it yet, but I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, any new technology coming today, any digital layer coming today, takes hardly few hours or few days when people want to adopt it. If we look at how India has fared in this whole digital adoption cycle, this one survey will give you a great idea. This was done by Dell Technologies. I used to be part of Dell, so I'm using that reference here. So in 2016, when we did a survey with top companies in India, we found that 19% of people had started adopting or adopted, and 34 plus 32, they were in the cycle of adoption, and 15% had not even adopted digital. But within 2 years, the cycle changed. This whole number game changed. Now we had 45% people adopted from 19%, which is more than 2x. Then we had around 54% people in the progress. Then we had 1% only not still started, which means if I take today's number, 2020, I'm sure this 1% would have become zero. Okay, so which means everybody has started adopting digital. What is happening now? With this digital disruption 3.0, we are entering a new phase where these 4 A's are going to drive everything we do, our life, our work. And it's happened last 3 months. You would have seen virtual working, remote working, work from home, collaboration, meetings, delivery of school sessions, everything is happening online. And most of this is happening with these technologies, which are making it happen now. And that is where the whole process of data and security gives us a nightmare. Because today we want everything fast. We want everything to be done by the click of a button, and data is getting produced like anything. 90% data produced. I'm sure today, if I take this number, this would have become 95%. 95% data in last 2 years. So much data we produce. But when we do that, our threats are increasing. Threats are increasing because you have data everywhere. Your dependency on online, your dependency on virtual, your dependency on data becomes too high. Then any small problem in terms of either a hacking or a phishing attack or a ransomware attack or whatever can happen can become very dangerous for all of us. And then we were hit by this, which we had never predicted. We had never predicted, okay, we predicted attacks. We predicted, okay, floods can come and my data center access will go down. Still, we managed to do that. Earthquake might come. So we had a DCDR. But what happened now, we had something which nobody had thought, so nobody had planned. Corona. And that is what last 3 months everybody was trying to see how we handle this, how we handle our data, how we handle our security, how we manage that same kind of delivery experience to our customers and partners what we used to do before this happened. And that's happening today with digital disruption. But as I said, this is creating a challenge, a risk, which is Corona, which is the cyber risk. And that is why today we decided that let's hear from one of the experts how we can manage this, how this has been managed, and what are the new things or some of those pointers which we would like to know. I'm sure we would like to know and adopt in our own organizations, in our own life, in our own social circles. And here I present to everybody our guest speaker for today. retired Colonel Inderjeet Singh. Mr. Inderjeet Singh is a renowned cybersecurity expert in the country. He comes with defense background, so you can understand uh, a person who has been driving cybersecurity in defense. There's no need to introduce him. He has been here for last 27 years working in the industry and has been an expert, and I worked with him a lot. He has delivered sessions. We have been together in a couple of conferences, and his level of knowledge of cybersecurity is something which I'm sure we all should be proud of, and we would love to hear from him what exactly is happening in this space right now and how we as a team can help each other to make sure that our customers, our partners do not face that kind of challenge. So over to Mr. Inderjeet Singh.
Thank you, Ravinder, and it's really thanks for the kind words, and thank you the complete team of Mercoda for calling me here for a very talk on a very topic which is so interesting for everyone, and especially when we are all going through the pandemic, and in some form or the other we are day in and day out facing the challenge of the cybersecurity. So it is a kind of topic which requires deliberation. It's a topic which requires a thought, and whether it's a kid, whether it's a old, or whether the kind of enterprise, we are all talking of the problems what we are facing in the pandemic. And you very rightly brought in that the journey of the industrial revolutions all is taking place and the digital disruption, how it has led us to this situation where we see that the cybersecurity has become the very much part of any digital disruption, right? Earlier, as we all know that earlier once in a year or 6 months in a year, we used to just think one odd cyber attack happening, and this frequency was pretty low when in earlier years of 2000 or before that. But now what's happening? It's happening every hour. We are seeing a cyber attack, and the magnitude of the cyber attack is increasing each day, and the complexity is increasing. Why? Because the hackers are quite active, and if you just take it that's in a cat and a mouse race, the hackers are ahead and the law enforcement agencies are trying to catch to their doings, right? And the pandemic in fact had brought a situation where hackers took the big advantage of this particular pandemic. While we were all struggling with fighting with the pandemic, hackers took it as their business model to bring and make things more challenging for the people, right? And as such, what has been brought, Ravinder, that coronavirus has in fact made us a lot of challenges which we faced, and even till date, if you look at it, though we may say that we have all good, we are all good to go for the next, and we are going to face it, but definitely there are a lot of challenges. And something what we saw the impact of the COVID-19 when it happened, and certainly that was in the month of March when everybody was told to move out of their offices, and that's the global fact. But unfortunately what happened was that we had never tested our business continuity plans, right? And we just wanted to move out because we wanted to be secure, we wanted to be safe, and very, very well, we have to be safe. First is the safety of our health, and then comes the next. But at the same time, when it came to the industry, the offices, the corporates, though we had all the business continuity plans, incident response plans, risk managements, everything was in place, but we had never tested that. And this pandemic situation, has make us test those kind of, paper knowledge, what we'll say, or we wanted to put it across and take the things further. We were not ready for the transition, right? And we were not ready for running the businesses from home. We never thought so, right? And that was a new normal, and that's how we thought of how to, work from home, deliver the same what we are doing it while we were in office, right? And we all know that traditional systems were never ported onto the cloud to support the remote workers. So while we were moving to the homes to work from there, our infrastructure was in our offices, the small data centers of the enterprises which were there, not because not everybody works from cloud. So they were never been put to test for making all the people to work from home. Because while we talk of transition from the on-prem infrastructure to the cloud, because that adaptation is a different subject when we talk of it, because pandemic brought in those opportunity to shift from on-prem to the cloud scenario. And something which was concerning us, it was the employee attendance. We don't know how to market. We don't know how to measure the productivity of the people. It's a big challenge. That's what the COVID brought into us. We may be sitting long hours now in front of the machines, but the productivity wise, if I look at it, it's a big question as to how many hours of actual output which I'm going to give. Sitting in front of the screen or having a longer screen time won't give that much amount of results which was something which concerned everyone, because we were working from our own offices, on infrastructure. The customer expectations with limited capacities was a challenge. We also face a challenge, something on the third-party suppliers or third-party vendors. How do we encompass or incorporate in our own networks? We never thought of it earlier, and this is a big challenge which is brought in, and the sustained culture to manage the pandemic stress, because most of us do have that challenge of the pandemic. Right. While the COVID was moving, and at the same time, I told you, like, the hackers had a real good time, and what was seen that the number of phishing websites increased, okay, and registered websites which went up to almost 1,49,000 websites, which were the phishing websites which were seen, right? And this had grown almost 35%, than what we had seen in the January 2020, right? And the hackers, unfortunately, didn't even leave the hospitals for that matter. And they targeted major hospitals and medical institutions in almost 194 countries, right? And it was kind of a ransomware attacks which were there. So when I say the hospitals were being attacked in terms of the malware and the ransomware, and one example which I like to quote, and it was really worse, that was the Czech Republic, 16th of March. People were going in for their health checkups and tests, whereas it was hit by the malware and the ransomware, and the complete hospital surgeries were to be stopped, and they were being all treated for COVID. Right? And India is also not devoid of all these challenges. Last couple of weeks, we have seen so much of threats on our cyber space which are there has increased multifold. There are almost 22 malwares that have been detected in India in last couple of months. We are seeing, and you would also seen that there were a lot of phishing email attacks which happened. We saw attack on the power grid. I'll discuss that subsequently. So that's the kind of thing which are happening, right? Even so, we are seeing the cyber attackers are targeting the loan holders and contacting them on the pretext of the postponement of the EMI payments. That's very common what we're seeing in India. So these guys are just not, getting over it. So there are scams, there are phishing, there are malwares everywhere for the last 3-4 months. So the complete cyber space from the cyber crime perspective has been phenomenally very active, right? And as we discuss in our talk, you will find that it's really a very precarious situation to see, right? And Kerala, of course, has been recorded as the highest number of cyber crimes during lockdown. You'll be surprised, and number of scamsters who were there, the number of attacks which happened, it was very high. And this peak happened between February 20 and mid of April 2020, right? So that's the way we are, seeing. And there were all sort of people who were attacked. There were individuals who were being cyber attacked. There were corporates which are being cyber attacked. So all of them, right? And 37 cyber crime cases were being registered in Pune region itself during the lockdown, right? So it's being very specific, very targeted, attacks which are happening. So we had to be very careful as to, while we are going through this pandemic. At the same time, what we are finding is, while we move from the on-prem to work from home culture, 57% of the CIOs worldwide are concerned about their visibility of the endpoints. Now, for example, you're working from home. It doesn't give a visibility to your CIO of your device. He's lost. It's a big problem for him, right? So he's not having a visibility of your laptops, your servers, your virtual machines, containers, cloud infrastructure, right? And this is actually creating a bigger threat landscape and making the companies more vulnerable to cyber attack. And there goes different number of figures, as regards the surge in the cyber attack is concerned. Somebody says 400,000 times, somebody say 100,000 times. But in terms of one of the studies which I went through, it says it went up to almost 238 times the cyber attacks which are happening on the banks, right? And some problem which I want to highlight here, the organizations, what they were facing on the ground was that the CISO or the IT team, the security team, or the CIO, they had a real big problem challenging and the challenges in the complete operations of the IT environment. And they practically require almost 38 separate tools to manage the complete IT environment. So that's the kind of workload which has increased by just moving the people out of the offices to the work from home culture, right? And what has happened is, while these attacks were happening, they have a very different pattern or a very interesting pattern altogether, right? And it's only not the cyber attackers were doing all this, right? The hackers who were doing all this. The nation state actors also started exploiting the COVID-19, right? So that's something which is very alarming, that we saw APT 36, we saw APT 28, Russian APT, North Korean APTs, Chinese APTs, pandas which were there. So they also started the work on targeting the countries and things like that. And they were very thematic, right? And they were trying to lure the people or the company or the industry or the networks to the malicious payloads in the link. And they were very specific. The lures were made in a manner that you really fall for that lure. Okay. And what has been happening, though I'm not going to be discussing about the dark web or the deep web, what is happening is the amount of data which has been sold in last 3 to 4 months in the dark web and deep web is really phenomenal. Whether it's a bank data, whether it was a Cognizant data, whether it's a Power Grids data, most of them have been sold in the dark web. And the price was peanuts, right? A couple of $100,000, and that's the end of it, right? So those kind of things which we have been seeing of late, which has increased quite a bit. So darknet, the activities of the hackers doing the selling has been quite high, right? Then there were all fraudulent sales of hard to obtain products started hitting the global market. So people started coming out with selling the coronavirus medicines. There's scams of that kind of things which are there. There were face mask scams which started up, right? And the things of those nature have been picking up momentum in last couple of months. And of course, the fake news. And we are all, some form or the other, facing that fake news and misinformation, which is actually causing panic and civil unrest in specific regions. So that's what we have seen. Earlier time now, the things we are trying to stabilize. Earlier, we had seen that we should try and see what's a corona update, what's a coronavirus update in this region, how many cases have increased, what are the medicine, what are the cure, and whatever your weaknesses were, the hackers were trying to exploit those kind of weaknesses. So how the hackers were leveraging this pandemic? What we have seen is, the email phishings have increased almost 600%. right, during this time. And they were targeting three major kind of themes on which they were targeting the people. One was a scamming, second was a brand impersonation, and third was a business email compromise, because they knew that your laptop is the most insecure right now when you're working from home. You don't have the endpoint security in that, right? So those are the uh, kind of weaknesses they were trying to exploit. And while you were working from home, they knew that your home Wi-Fi is not secure. You would have definitely put password or default passwords in the home Wi-Fi, right? And these attacks were in multiple languages. They came up with multiple attachments, right? And that really gives a thought that the scope of the campaign was very specific, and they wanted to target very large piece of people, to these kind of attacks. And as the pandemic, was changing from country to country, if you remember, it came from China to Italy, then Spain, then France, and all those things. The pandemic also was shifting in that manner. The cyber attacks were shifting in that manner. So they were targeting the people in different countries differently, right, with different themes, and they knew what they want from that particular country. And in India also, we are finding a similar kind of thing which is happening. And while this was happening, even the Android phones or the Android applications was not, left alone. So we found a lot of coronavirus update apps which came up, which everybody will follow to, because it was coming from WHO, some of them, and looked very authentic. But whereas the moment you downloaded that Corona update app, it stole your data. It took your IMSI number, your IMI number, your mail, your SMSs, everything. And what has been seen is that during this pandemic, there have been almost more than 100,000 new domains which came up, very surprisingly. And in the next view foil, I'll just show it to you how it happened. And though all may not be suspicious, but most of them were malicious, and they tried to steal data and make problems for the people. And this is how, if you look at how the coronavirus domains were registered, maybe the names are like this: coronavirus update, corona help, COVID-19 update, COVID-19 help. These are the domains pertaining to those kind of things which are there. And if you look at it, starting mid of February, the things picked up till March, and that kept on happening. It's almost, the number of domains which got created were phenomenally very high. This was a new thing which we were seeing as to how it is happening. So while I spoke of the scamming, the brand impersonation, and the business email compromise, one of the study which had happened and by Bakuda, and they brought in that there was almost 54% of the people were being given as scamming mails, right? And when I talk about spear phishing is, that means the hacker would have already done due diligence about you. He would have done the social engineering about you. He knows who you are. Definitely, those are the kind of things he would have done, and then only he would have launched the spear phishing on you, right? Then was the brand impersonation that accounted for almost 34%, and blackmailing was 11%, and 1% was your business email compromise. And this is how they were targeting. And most of the people fell prey. And as per the records which are available, details which are available by Gmail, there are almost 18 million mails per day were pertaining to the phishing mail. So the spam filters, in fact, have been working full time in all the emails, email servers, to check on these spear phishing mails, right? So what we saw further, that in Italy, when they came up with the cyber attack and they injected the malware in some of the people's emails, they were very specific to steal the credentials of the account of the Italy people. Okay, so the point which I want to drill home is they were very thematic. They were targeting people of specific region, and they were trying to follow the path of the corona as it was moving, right? And the malwares also, we saw a number of malwares which kept on increasing, and we also saw the coronavirus related phishing attacks increasing, and they were all modular, and they allowed the different payloads being downloaded from the same malware. So, and we also saw the traces of Retd, that's the banking trojan, which was happening right now. Right? And here I will just bring out a point. While this was happening, there were the cases of sextortion also started happening in the month of February, March. And one point which is a point of concern, but definitely I'd like to tell you, during the month of March, April, we saw number of people from India. There are almost 50 million people, 5 crore people were watching the pornography at any given time. That was the point of concern. And taking that cue, they started launching sextortion. Sextortion cases were like, we have seen you watching the porno, and we have made a video out of it. If you don't pay money in Bitcoin, we will make the video public. Okay, so these are the kind of cases which started emerging up, and they started increasing quite a bit. Right. So just to highlight as to the phishing websites which came up, a lot of them, and the one which I told you, the phishing websites which were more than 1 lakh domains which got created, and you see some point or the other domains, subdomains, there was something COVID related things which were there in it, and they were tried and used to launch the phishing attacks. So that's the kind of thing which we saw quite a bit. Some of the phishing tactics which were used, very common, and people fell prey to it, was you will get a message on your Apple iPhone or your SMS for a Netflix subscription, which was free, a premium subscription, and you will fall for that. Once you click on that link, it will take you to the Facebook link, and it will ask for the password and user ID. Definitely, once you put in, it's a skimmed site. You will not notice it. You would have lost your password of user Facebook. Once you go through that stage, it will take you now to a page which is a kind of survey where it doesn't make a difference whether you answer right or wrong. All questions are right, and you have been given you have been told to be given a 3-month subscription once, but there's a catch. Once you do that, it takes you back to the Facebook to again log in, right? And now it tells you to share that message with 20 of your contacts or 5 groups. And this was a big lure what we had seen during the corona time. And this is one example. There are a number of examples of this nature which are happening, and things have been very active. This we saw in India, that while everybody was struggling for free data. So this is from MTNL itself. There's a message which comes up, and if you look at it, it's a short scripted email ID with corona.gov-in. Practically, this kind of domains never are not there in India, but people will fall prey for it, and you get it, offer. And once you click on it, it's again trying to steal your credentials. So these are the kind of emails scams which were occurring. Then something which we saw very common, and it was highlighted for the first time when there was a PM Care fund which was created, and the very next day we saw there were different PM Care funds which emerged. Okay, and whereas the correct UPI ID is PM Cares at SBI, right? There were so many fake IDs which got created. Even if you look at it, there was a PM Care @SBI, right, was also created. That was the fake ID. Similarly, there were number of fake IDs in number of different banks which got created. They're all fake, right? Because a common man would not know which is the actual one. right? So I just want to drill home a point. Hackers are so fast, and this happened the day one. There was a ID of PMKs get created, and day two, we are finding the fake IDs coming up, right? So the period between the original ID creation and the fake ID was so minimal, right? So that's the kind of things were happening right in and right out. Okay. Then what we are finding it, this is the very latest one in the month of June. Even the certain has given an advisory that COVID 2019 at gov.in is being used for the phishing attacks, right? So this was thought to be that they'll be targeting almost 20 million email IDs, right? And everyone was made cautious about it, not to open these sites, not to open any link of these malicious sites. So that's what we were seeing, right? While this was happening, there's another things which kept on moving. The kind of threats which were happening for the remotely working people was the remote login credentials were being stolen. There were email scams and phishing which were happening. The ransomware and malwares which were injected. And if you look at on the viewfoil, there was a mail which it was spoofing the email ID of the WHO, and you definitely will not look in for the exact words of the WHO, and it was from no reply at the rate who.org, and it said that you click on the link and download the do's and don'ts, and it will look as if so legitimate that you may open it up, and phishing email site would you'll land up in a phishing site, or a malware will get injected in your machine. So these are the spoofing tactics which are being used to trick users quite often, and it's all happening. And then something more was happening, like very interestingly, where you will get a link of a WebEx. Now you practically don't know that this is the original WebEx link, or it is a malicious link. So one of the companies, which is Cofense, they did the complete survey of these links, and they knew how the hackers have been exploiting the CV vulnerability in the Docker engine configuration itself, right? And this was being used aggressively. Then something what the hackers were using for the messaging from the company itself, they will spoof into the company domains, change the domain, create it a similar looking name, and they will say that your work remotely enrollment, right? So it will say that we have the enrollment policy where we had to have the people selected for for the remote working, and you need to put in your email ID and passwords. You inadvertently thinking this mail to be original from a HR department will definitely click on it, and end up losing your credentials. So these are the kind of baits which they have been using. And then the Microsoft Office 365 has been the most lucrative thing for hackers, where they sent in the phishing mails and made them change their user ID passwords, their email passwords, and people landed up with losing their credentials, not realizing that it was from a phishing site and not from their original Office domains, right? And this is what I had earlier also spoken of, that there was an app which came up, very authentic looking app of Corona update, and people, the moment you download, there was more than required permissions you practically were giving. Okay, and once you give all those permissions, it was able to upload your voice notes, your contact stored, your accounts, your call logs, your location information, images, and also your phone credentials. That's a SIM information encompassing IMSI, IMI, SIM serial, operator name, mobile, so everything what was possible. So these all things all were happening. Okay, and that's why this 3 months have been pretty busy if you look at it as regards the cyber space is concerned. And like I brought in that the nation state actors were no less, they also jumped the bandwagon, and they also came up with a lot of spear phishing attacks. To name a few, Russia, China, North Korea have been most active, and of late APT 36, that's by Pakistan, has become very active, right? So like the Chinese APT was like Vicious Panda, Mustang Panda, uh, North Korean APTs, Russian APTs, right? And they're all targeting different networks, right? And to tell you, in India in particular, because these attacks have been happening world over, but give a focus towards India, I think last Sunday, that was when we saw a complete attack which happened on the power grid in J&K, and in that they, out of the 101 servers, they were able to compromise 24 servers, and they siphoned off the data from 4 servers, right? And this is all happening right now. The other thing which we saw, NHI losing data, right? Railways losing the signaling information. And why I'm telling you about these, because these are critical information infrastructure of the country. And the critical information infrastructure security is paramount. So we've been seeing lots of attacks by the nation state happening on India. There's a point of concern, and what we envisage is a health infrastructure, especially your coronavirus, research work which is happening now. It's under the bigger threat, right? The reason why, because the infrastructure which is being used, if they are able to steal data from those, infrastructure sites or your manufacturing sites of your healthcare, they will steal the complete manufacturing of the coronavirus vaccine. So we are envisaging that kind of threats to our healthcare. And to tell you here itself, healthcare is very important for the country, and healthcare is a new IT sector of the overall infrastructure. So those also have to be safeguarded. Right? Yeah. So that's what my point was, that the hospitals are very vulnerable. We have to safeguard against the sophisticated ransomware attack. And you must be thinking, how come hospitals are vulnerable? To tell you the very fact that most of the devices which are working in any healthcare are all connected to the internet, and they're all being monitored using the IoT and sensors. And once any device which is connected to the internet is most vulnerable to any cyber attack, right? Even the IT network of theirs, which is again very vulnerable when it gets connected to the infrastructure, to the IT network. Right? And hospitals, of course, are one of the critical information infrastructure of the country. And if they get logged, it will be very difficult to come over it unless and until we pay money to the hackers, right? And WHO, of course, has reported attempted cyber attacks since the COVID-19 crisis, which are being targeted very badly. So healthcare sector has to be safeguarded. It has to be taken care of well from all these cyber attacks. Now, coming on to the SME part of it, because SME forms the major chunk of any industry, right? And what are the vulnerabilities that can lead to attack for all these SMEs is that at the infrastructure side, they have a very less secure infrastructure. So it may be a one rack, a couple of servers which are going to be there, and one guy who's going to handle the complete infrastructure. So there is no backup of data for them. There's no disaster recovery for them, right? So they don't have a 24/7 security monitoring. So those are kind of very vulnerable today, right? Then is the software. And as you all know, most of us do have a pirated softwares in the machine, which are already gone through the end of life, and there's no security, there's no antiviruses which are there, there are no upgrades which we are pushing up, and there's no endpoint protection, right? We don't have any protection, any DLPs in place. And also what we face a problem is we have a lack of security awareness. Everything is good for me. Everything is working for me. You ask any CISO, he'll say, my network is the best. My security is the best. But then also he will find the hack attack which still happens to him. So there's a lack of security awareness among different set of people who are there. There are very weak security policies. In fact, if there are security policies, they have not been enforced strictly, right? There's a lack of compliance to the regulations, which we are leaving it very loose, and we have a lack of the robust business continuity plan. And this I'm really harping on business continuity plan because this situation of pandemic has made us come to a level where if we don't have a business continuity plan, we come to standstill, and that's what has happened, right now. It makes the delivery or the recovery very fast, very delayed if you don't have a business continuity plan. And in the challenges what are there in the coming months with the SMEs is growing business demands. That's going to increase very high. There are going to be high volume of requests going to come up. Business users go around IT after that. And then you also have the infrastructure challenges what we are going to see, because there's going to be limited budget because you're going to be saving that money for something else. It's going to be a very complex environment because half of your people are sitting outside your network, half in your infrastructure. Really, it becomes a very difficult situation for the IT guys. They're evolving threats. The threat vector, the threat landscape has changed. It's increasing multifold day in and day out. And technology options are, we really need to test it and work on it. So IT department as a whole, it's going to have a testing time. It's not going to be easy cakewalk for the next couple of months. So they really need to work very aggressively with a complete plan in place right now. And how do the business leaders, can align and have a strategy while working from home? This I have listed it out in two, buckets. One at a strategic level, at the thought process level, and second is at the tactical level where we think of how it's going to work. So at a strategic level, we really have to have the business continuity plan. How big or small an organization is, we need to work on it now, right? Otherwise, we are into a problem. Then is the risk management. Most of us, we think of it, we talk of it, but we never place. Disaster recovery plan. That should be in place. Your instant response. So IR is so very important because instant response and your cyber resiliency go hand in hand, right? How fast you will rebound back to the state which you were in earlier, right? So this is so important for the business leaders, right, to take a call and work from home users, because this is a new normal. At a strategic level, we need to think of it right now as to how we have to go over it. It just can't be like we'll have a couple of guys working from home. We'll just wait for some more time and take a call as and when it happens. That won't work out very well. And a tactical level, VPNs, because most of us do work without VPNs. We are accessing the data without VPN, and what happens is we may end losing up our credentials while we are using the same laptop, when we are accessing the same data of the company and also browsing through other sites. And the browser becomes your total culprit, and we have to scale the VPN capacity in all. Pushing off patches, pushing off your capacity, having a stable VPN connectivity is so very important now. Your remote data access policy, that is another one which we have to think of. We have to take a call and work on it. Then I spoke of your insecure home wireless networks, because most of us, while we are working from home, have insecure networks, right? And most of us don't have any secrecy. We would have not invoked the WPA2 authentications properly. Our passwords would be default passwords that need to be taken care of. Then is your BYOD, your CYODs. Those had to be kind of have the policy or have an MDM in place to make them stabilize. Also have encrypted emails when you're communicating, and also work out on a password policy. The password policy, like a cyber hygiene and password policy, goes hand in hand. So change the passwords in a very sequential manner. It has to be changed regularly. The password strength has to be worked out. So all those factors, when we talk about the password policies, are very important, which we need to be taken care of, right? Video conferencing system, of course, Ravinder, you touched on the video conferencing, and still everybody struggling onto having a stable video conferencing system which can work well, and where we have the right kind of faith that our data is not being stolen, our data is safe, and we have a very stabilized video conferencing system. And of course, the cyber hygiene and the capacity building. So cyber hygiene has to be really enforced on the users, on your employees, because now is the time. You cannot forcefully put the password policies. You cannot have the complete ISMS invoked while people are working from home. So those policies had to be retrospectively thought of as to how you need to take care of it, right? So some of the best practices, I think I've gone short beyond my scheduled time. I'll just try and wind up faster. So some of the best practices which we need to follow is going for a two-factor authentication or a multi-factor authentication. Have a DLP in place. Opt for a SOC if you don't have, and go in for a SOAR. User access behavior is one thing which I always say, because you don't know what your users are doing while they're at home. So you can go in for a UEBA. Refine your IT policy. This is the right time. Your social media policy, because the same laptops are being used for your social media and your work as well. So do that and draft a new work from home policy for employees, which we have never done so, right? We need to do that. And if we are not moving to the cloud, there's a right time to move from on-prem to the cloud. And not last but the least is data privacy is a key as user accessing confidential data from home. So that's pretty important. And one slide which I like to show is, we should have a kind of total different tools at different levels to make the complete network secure, your endpoint secure, your user secure. So have a DLP in place, have a VPN in place, have an antivirus in place, endpoint security in place, have a kind of the proper cloud if you want to do it, have a MDM for your users. So all those things which we need to think of while all the employees are working from home. And some bit of the points which I like to leave is be careful while clicking on links or opening attachments in emails and texts, because you may be spearfished any time of the day. Stay calm and don't fall to the social engineering praise, because that's the way the hackers are very active. And if you're, approving the financial transactions or banking from your home, never rely on the email alone. So have a two-factor authentication whenever you're doing any approvals for your office. And you should primarily have a phone call, video chat, or secure instant messaging if you're approving any transaction for that matter. Visit trusted sites for COVID-19 information. Don't just jump onto every site and any site. And a case in point was there was a very glossy map which was practically showing the updates of the coronavirus, and the hackers had made a similar skimming map, and they were trying to fingerprint the people who came there. So that's the kind of situation which is, and of course, be very careful while installing new applications on your smartphones or tablets, right? So don't do that. But at the end, the crisis will end, and the threat will still persist and we are seeing all the cyber attacks increasing. And the silver bullet is protect your enterprise, right? And be cyber safe, be stay safe. You know. So if there are any questions, I think we'll take it at the end of the overall discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ravinder. So I have finished.
Thanks, sir. This was a great insight about what's happening, what kind of challenges, risks, and I think everybody on this session would have definitely have no doubts that whatever we are doing, using too much of technology, apps, mobiles, everywhere, cybersecurity needs a priority, and we need to be very focused when it comes to using data. I was just reading that in last 1 year, 66% of companies who had their enterprises hit by ransomware, they paid.
That's
66% of
right.
companies paid,
That's right.
which is which is a financial drain for anybody, right? So I think that's great, and we will definitely take some questions at the end of the session. In the interest of time, we'll just move forward. So, team, I would like to now invite and introduce our partner, Mr. John Jha. John is the CEO of Nazak, a very specialized boutique cybersecurity services startup and part of our go-to-market platform. John, you can see he has been in technology area for many years, and he was also nominated early this year among the top 10 emerging companies in networking and security by CEO magazine, and also in the top 20 enterprise security services provider by CIO review. So Nazak is trying to create a niche when it comes to offering cybersecurity services and solutions. And today, John is going to give some idea about what they do. And also, he has promised me that all the audience and participants and our network, he would like to definitely offer some kind of specialized services to all of us. So let's hear from John. John, welcome.
Thanks, Ravina. Thank you so much for your kind words. It was truly an honor. And thank you, Mr. Inderjeet, the insight about the way things have been moving and the way you showed us during the pandemic season what is happening at this stage. So thank you so much in the first place. Now, what I would like to understand to a large extent, uh, just sorry. So we as a cybersecurity, we have been in the space for quite some time, and we look forward to see how we can emerge as one-stop shop in the space of cybersecurity. Now, before even I go and proceed further, I would like to tell about a recent joke that I read, and we all can relate to the space of cybersecurity. See, uh, there was a person and he couldn't find the lock for his house, and during this COVID season, you see, he said that, okay, I'm going to put a board or a paper stating that this is a corona or COVID area, restricted area. And he went, leaving his door unlocked, though it was. When he comes back, he saw that there is already a theft in his house, and there is another paper that says that we wear PPE kit and do our job. You see, many times thief or the hackers does the same work to a large extent. That's because they understand that they need to evolve the way technology is evolving. I remember the time when I started on the space of cybersecurity. I remember I started with the processing speed of 800 megahertz, which was way too low than what we have in our mobile data. And I think Ravinder did talk about digital disruption. I at least, like, I come from an age where I started my computing from 800 megahertz processor. There, to even connect to a proper internet, to even think of even brute forcing, it used to take months. But today, with the processing capacity and the disruption and technology that is happening, the brute forcing of a large data can be done in about few hours time. So that is a technology that has evolved, the way that has the attackers have come in. So the attackers, the hackers have gone ahead and moved into the large extent of the space of the hacking era. Now, in the recent times, of course, we saw that there is a huge rise of cyber attack, which, of course, Ravinder as well as Mr. Inderjeet did mention that I think there were about 300%, 350% increase in cyber attacks. There were 256 in the space of phishing, and so on and so forth. And to my surprise, I read in one of the stats that there are close to 20,000 percentage increase in one section of malware attack alone. That was, on one area of malware attack alone. So you see, and this all happened since the month of March, March, April, May, June. So since then, there has been a huge rise in the attack at this stage right now. Now, as a company, what we do, we primarily work on the space of four areas: products, services, staffing, and support, all inclined towards the space of cybersecurity. Not going much into this area, but I just wanted to make understand that how the hacking trends are searching. And this is a live desk that I'm sharing, wherein we're looking at the space of Google trends or the searches that is actually happening right now. And if you see today that one of the area is, which I think Mr. Indrajit was mentioning about the dark web. It says how to get on dark web. Come on, that's crazy, because people are actually searching how to get on dark web because they understand that about close to 90, my stats could be wrong, but I'm looking at 95% of the data is still on the dark web, which we see on the internet is very limited data. There's a lot of data that is still kept on the dark web, which of course, being revealed to the large extent in as when time comes. The another search is how to scam. You see, there are certain good searches that has happened and has shown certain peaks like hacking course online, ethical hacking, and all those things in related to cybersecurity. But majority of the out of the five, you see, one is how to scam, and this is one of the largest area we talk about, and this is a Google stats. It is not my stats, but this is a Google stats where it says how to scam is one of the largest search. How to scam cash app, that means we're talking about financial applications, which again relates to a large extent of your phishing attack, your mobile SMS involved, the way the SMS has been sent, you have won. I mean, I'm sure if I read these lines, you all will be able to relate. You have won 400 GBP pound of currency. You know, you see that those kind of emails were there about 5 years, 6 years back, were at a very large sector booming. But then later stage, it came on WhatsApp. It started coming. You have won a WhatsApp lottery. It started coming as an SMS, and then based on that, you had a link stating that, hey, you are getting a free access to Netflix, which of course in the did talk about. Uh, you see, there are a lot of being scams that is happening, and people are trying different ways, searching about it. They're researching about it. People are researching on how to attack the corporates, not the large enterprise, but you would be surprised to know the attack size that is happening is not to a large corporates that is majorly target, because the large corporates covers the attack is very less compared to the small sector or medium sector industry, because medium sector, the number of entities are much higher than the large corporate sectors. Now each entity data is valuable, and that's exactly what the attackers are doing to in these days. You see, 43% of the attacks, cyber attacks, are aimed at small businesses, because they understand that these are the small things, just like we say, that every small drop fills the pot. These small drops, because for them it is, for the attackers or for the hackers, is it is about pumping in, doing a phishing, gathering the information. Now, to relate to this, I'll give you a simple example. I have one of my customer from Europe, and it so happened that they had to make certain payments to their vendor. Now, this is a pure thing that actually happens in most of the cases, or most of the companies where you have a customer and you have vendor. So as a company, you'll have a customer and you'll have vendors. Now, in this case, he had to pay to his vendor for certain amount of money, and this was a good amount if you convert to the Indian currency. And then they also have in the EU region, they also have something of the sort wherein if they do not make the payment on certain stipulated time frame, they are bined for certain penalty. and there was a penalty clause. So it so happened that this was again a very small company, and the accountant of that particular company receives an email from the vendor stating that we have changed our account details, requesting you to transfer into this particular account. And they had a proper invoice, they had the same email ID. And to your surprise, you'll be baffled to know it was actually the same email ID. There was no email ID change that had happened. It came from the legitimate email ID to the legitimate user. The invoice copy looked a replica of the previous one, but the account details had been changed. Now, in this case, what happened? And unfortunately, in this case, the customer had made the payment because they did not want to get into the penalty clause. Later, after a month, the vendor calls them and they find out that this has not been cleared. So they asked for the payment to be cleared, wherein they said that the payment has already been done. This is where the entire story started, and we got involved after about a month after the attack had happened. Now, after a month, imagine the attack had happened. The money was gone. The attacker was happy, enjoying maybe with whatever he wants to do. He was happily enjoying with that sum of money, uh, and the only challenge that happened, two things that happened. Number one, the vendors was again a small time business. His email was compromised. Secondly, the client again was a small time business. His email was compromised. For simple reason was that if they would have followed the basic hygiene of spam filtering or certain checks, which I'm going to talk about in next slides, if they would have done a basic hygiene, I'm sure they would have gone ahead and gone into the next level of getting into the or safeguarding themselves from the possible attacks. Now, another thing, which of course Mr. Inderjeet did mention, was 91% of the attack launched within the phishing email. Phishing is happening like a crazy today. I mean, it's there's no way people. I mean, there's no way. It's like uh, fish market. The phishing is really a fish market today. It's a crazy stuff that is happening, and moreover, not only the small businesses, but a small businessmen like an entrepreneurs, like the CEOs, CTOs, they are also getting affected on their personal email IDs to a large extent because their data are being sold to a large extent. Now, a business falls victim to a ransomware attack every 14 seconds. Oh, this is crazy because every 14 seconds there is a business. That's a stat. It's not something that I'm creating right now, but this is a stat that says that every 14 seconds there is a ransomware attack, and every 38% of the malicious attachments are masked as one of the Microsoft Office type of file or another. This is whenever you open up an attachment, it could be masked. There could be some other information, just like when you have an application that you're talking about, which of course Mr. Inderjeet did show it on his screen, that you will have to give allow permissions for various multiple things which possibly you might not even need, and indirectly it has been masked, and your contacts, your passwords, your not passwords, contacts, your photographs, your galleries, your camera are being all this information are being sent. And of course, one of the area that Mr. Nijit mentioned was about pornography. Again, that was a huge scam that had happened in the recent times, and the attack that had happened because people know that they want to safeguard their, their image and things like that. So people will be buying it. Now, companies face an average of 22 security breaches in 2020. So that's the number that we're talking about. The globe cost of online crime is expected. I'm not talking about the cyber security budget. I'm not talking about this is a 6 trillion by 2021. That is the crime budget I'm talking about. People are looking at not the budget which they'll be looking at, that this is the business that is there in this. Oh, no, this is not how I'm talking about business, but this is crime values that I'm talking about, where there could be a loss of 6 trillion, not billion, but $6 trillion by 2021. And then there is a hacker attack every 39 seconds. That means by the time we would have finished our session, there would have been multiple of hacking attack that would have already taken into place. And the most crucial thing that I want to talk is about, like you see, I gave an example wherein my customer, and this is a live example, wherein my customer was able to find out that his email was being compromised, the vendor's email was being compromised. It took him about a month, and that too because the vendor came back asking for money. Usually it takes about 6 months to even find out that there was an attack. It's like, okay, there was an attack. I never knew that there was an attack. I never knew that somebody had actually taken my email IDs. I never knew that somebody had actually gone ahead and taken my cell phone number. You see, I mean, before COVID season, if you recollect, you remember that in some of the shopping malls, people will come and take down your email IDs and and your contact number, and then these numbers were actually given and sold physically. But that physical aspect is not actually happening right now in your small businesses. You have a website, you're collecting some contact information, you're collecting some details about your customers, prospects, you're saving some information on your portal, you're saving creating some database, which again, most of the customers or most of the businesses in today's era are doing it because they would need customers. And these are the ones that has been targeted to very high extent, because these are very raw data, fresh data, that your work, you would have, like, say for example, if you're a business owner, you would have contacted 10 different people wherein you wanted or 100 of people wherein you wanted all this information, and these are your top directors, CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, CFOs, and all their information. This information is valuable for you, and you worked to get those information, you work to get those connections, you and I would have worked to get all that information. We would have worked to get those synergies and that relationship. But then some attacker takes that information and gives it at a throwaway price. It is like, I mean, if I'm not wrong, it is close to about 1 paise per record, 1 paise. So that is that cheap. It is being sold in dark web at times. Now, the recent attack techniques that has happened to a large extent is, again, malware is one of the highest. There have been, again, malware, targeted SQL injection, Zoom bombing, social networking, DDoS, web shells. All this have happened to uh, ensure, or to ensure the attacker actually ensures that your data is being pulled up without your information at times. It's like, the phishing attack, which Mr. Inderjeet was showing, that you click a link, you type in your username, password, and then after that, again, it will redirect you back to the same original social media site. So that's exactly what happens. The attackers, I have personally seen, because I work in this industry, I personally seen that many of people, they go ahead, the many of attackers, they go ahead and they try to work in a very swift fashion. Like, I'll give another example. This is another one of my customer wherein they had an attack. This happened on Friday night. And the customer's server was located in US. They were all connected via VPN. Now, this particular attack, suddenly I receive a call from the director of that particular company and says that there is a possible breach that is happening at this stage. There were about 6 million hits that happened in about 2 hours time. And where was these people working? There, they had from the three machines, they had the attack that was happening simultaneously. Uh, and the attack was ongoing, that was happening and not stopping. So they had to simply shut down the machine, and that's what happened. And these guys were all working from home. And from their home, they had connected to the VPN in India. From India VPN, routing had gone to the US VPN, and then there was an attack that was happening. What could have gone wrong? You know what happened? When we started doing a bit of R&D, for us initially, that 2 to 3 days, it took a real toll because we couldn't find. But after some time, when we started looking at the DLL files and all those things, we found out there was a self-destructive bot that was being implanted in these machines. Now, these are very, very dangerous because these are self-destructive bots. They would simply take your information and pass it on. They're just like they act as a catalyst, wherein they initiate they trigger some they trigger some files. They would trigger that initiation process, and then after that, they're gone. unless until you actually start looking at the DL files. For us, and then, we when we looked at it, so they had given us 3 different machines for us to look at it. And then suddenly I realized that this is not something that is right. I think there's something more that needs to be looked at. Uh, I called up the guys and I said, you know what, let me understand whose laptop were there. And all these people were.
John, I'm sorry, we have only 5 minutes for the entire webinar. So we still need to cover something. So I'll have to
Sure.
request you to just move it to the offer slide. I think that will be better.
Sure. So now, before I just, so on the estimate percentage on website that gets hacked is, to a large extent, is on the plugin, brute forcing, core theme, hosting, and file permission. So there are different kinds of attack that happens. Solution: 80% of the problem can be solved by getting the cyber hygiene correct. That is as simple as that. You need not look at the latest advanced technology to a large extent, unless until it's required. But 80% can be solved by solving the basic cyber hygiene. And then the areas that needs to be looked at is keeping your software up to date, enforcing a strong password policy, looking at encrypting the login page, keeping your website clean, backing up your data, scanning of your websites and vulnerabilities, and if required, hire a security expert. Now, this is the offer that I would like to put it across to most of our people over here. We would be very much interested in performing a web security assessment. If you have a website, we'll be able to perform a web security assessment, and just for about $100. And what we would be doing is, we would be very much happy to see or detect the current security weaknesses before the attackers do. We'll be looking at all the list of inventory threats, or we'll be showcasing all the different kind of threats that probably could be there on the website that is being hosted on any of your servers right now. The listing of vulnerabilities for each website, preparation for the future upgrades, establishing of security record and for later assessment. And then we will obviously give you a defined risk assessment for your entire website. We'll be taking that entire website, we'll be understanding the risk, we'll be doing a risk methodology. And then once we have done the risk methodology, we'll be defining the entire risk assessment based on the business needs that you have currently. And then of course, we'll be looking forward to plan for the risk versus benefit, and then optimizing the security investment that is required in days to come. That can be again taken a call by each individual at this stage of time. So this is something that I would like to offer. Thank you so much, Ravinder. Ravinder?
Hi, thanks, John. Sorry, guys, we have only 2-3 minutes left, so we would like to finish on time. So we now have clear idea about how this whole cybersecurity assessment and cybersecurity threats are coming up. John has given a very good offer that we can get cybersecurity assessment done for our customers, our partners, their websites, their organization, a wide infrastructure, so that they are clear that what loopholes they will have. We will be sending, of course, an email to all with the links and everything, so that you can connect to the right people. We'll give you all those details through email. Before we close, I just wanted to give an idea about what all Mercado does. As I said, GoKadal is a cloud platform through which we provide all the solutions and services. We have around 24 solutions on GoKadal as well, including cyber assessment, cyber security, risk, consulting around smart cities, IoT. We provide solutions around digital health. We've got solutions around water management using IoT, artificial intelligence, analytics as a platform, e-learning as a platform. So there are around 24 solutions. You can go to gokadal.com or mercadorha.com to understand what all we do as a company. And we work very closely with a lot of solution providers, customers, both in India and globally, via our Dubai setup. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have an office in Dubai, which is where we have a company called GoKadal Technologies, which runs a platform. In India, Mercado Technology is a transformation startup which provides services and solutions around multiple verticals in various domains, mainly focusing around emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, automation, IoT, blockchain, etc. We are based in Bangalore, and you can connect. We'll be sending anyway an email to all of you post this session, along with the recording of this webinar, some links to our online resources. And we would appreciate if you can share with your customers, partners. And if you have any questions, we can have 1 or 2 questions now before we just conclude. We have 1, 2 questions, or otherwise you can always email us. We'll be sending an email after this later today or tomorrow. And you can connect us back through the emails or through our social media, and we'll be giving all the links in the email. So with that, I would like to thank both Mr. Inderjeet Singh and John to provide this, to use this opportunity to share their thoughts, learnings, as well as sharing what services they can provide. And especially John's offer $100 assessment is something which is a base minimum required to understand how your vulnerabilities are in your internal or external organization. So any questions, we are happy to take it now or through emails later. And if there are, Aviral, any questions you have right now?
So right now I can see no questions in the chat,
Okay.
though the attendees may feel free to ask the questions through the mic.
Sure. Sure. If anybody has any questions, we have 2-3 minutes. We can take 1 or 2 questions.